Hi, I'm Tom from Rokon. I'm here today with Dave, and today we're doing a troubleshooting video on how to fix a broken driveline. The key thing to any Rokon, of course, is all-wheel drive. So if it's not working, we want to know quickly, as an owner, how to identify what's not working and how to fix it. Step one is to elevate the bike off the ground for this inspection step. And you can use a milk carton. We have a nice fancy rack, but you can use a milk carton. Anything that gets the bike off the ground so we can spin the wheels. The next step is we're trying to identify where there might be a broken roll pin in the driveline. Dave will spin the wheel, and you will notice that in this Rokon, both wheels are spinning. That means the all-wheel drive is working. But if the front wheel was not spinning, the first thing we would inspect would be to make sure as he spun it, spin it again, Dave. As he spins it, that the universal joint is turning. This tells us that the power is at least getting to the front as far as this point. If in this case, you didn't have two-wheel drive and the universal joint was spinning, the culprit for why there wouldn't be all-wheel drive would be in the front miter box. And in that case, you would have to remove the miter box and send it to us, and we would repair it for you. If, however, the front wheel drive the problem was further back, and we would go to look at the inspection holes. We have removed the bolts and the seat now to get at the inspection holes. Here you can see, in this picture, we have 3 inspection holes. Dave will point out which one we're going to look at first. The reason what he's doing is he's going to turn the tire at the rear, turn the wheel, and line up the roll pin hole to see down inside the inspection holes, and then he will determine if he can visually see that the roll pin is broken. Okay, that's how one inspects at this point on the bike. Also, I want to note that this is a good time, if you're doing regular maintenance, to lubricate these holes with 90-weight gear lube oil, which is a good procedure for the override spring on the driveline. We've lined up the rear roll pin hole, and now Dave has a quick check with a piece of wire. If the wire drops down in gently all the way, you can tell that the roll pin is solid and working fine. But if the wire only drops in part way, obviously the roll pin is broken internally and is jammed up. In this particular case, Dave would also, if it was broken, leave the wire in and use it as a way to fish out the broken piece and line it up so he can drive with a tap and tap out the broken roll pin. In this particular instance, you could also put in a brand new roll pin by tapping that right behind the broken one. As we showed you before, usually the break occurs in the rear roll pin hole, but sometimes Dave has noticed that it can occur in the forward one, so he's doing his test again on the forward one. It's not a bad idea to check there too. But in both cases, to repair a roll pin on a Rokon is quite easy. Roll pins are key. They are like an insurance policy. The roll pin breaks because you've shocked the system, jumped the bike too hard, or something along these lines. But the roll pin protects the gears in the gearbox and in the miter box from further damage. So now that we've done the check on the 2 roll pin holes, and Dave's shown you his little trick with the wire, let's assume for a moment that those roll pins are fine. And if that were the case, and you still didn't have two-wheel drive, we now know that the problem is really isolated to the transmission, which is right here. So if it's in the transmission, that's going to require transmission removal. And we will talk about how to remove the transmission and or the miter box next. If you've identified that your broken roll pin problem is in the transmission, this is how you're going to remove it. First, you're going to take the air filter and the cover off. You're going to remove your rear pulley and the belt in the back. You're going to remove your brake caliper off the bike completely. And you're going to remove, back off from 4 bolts. 3 in the back and 1 in the front, right there where Dave pointed. Those bolts now will make the transmission loose in your hand. And you can by knocking out the roll pin in the previously discussed inspection hole, you can now back the whole transmission backwards and get at it and lift it right out of the bike. If you have identified that the problem is in the miter box, the next thing would be to remove the miter box. Dave here has already loosened the headlights, so that's step 1. Step 2 will be to take the side cover off and the chain, the drive chain. Remove a drive chain, of course, all you have to do is identify where the master link is, pop that off, and the chain will come off. Then Dave would remove the bolts that bolt the miter box onto the bike, the front fork itself. Once those bolts are backed off and backed away, Dave can slide the miter box out of the bike forward. He'll also be pulling out the universal joint, which is only keyed on to the drive shaft. Dave has his hands now on the transmission. This is not the one that's in the bike, obviously, but we wanted to show you the relationship of how the transmission sits in the bike. The drive shaft comes through the center of the bike with the Sprague type clutch in the rear facing the transmission. Goes up to the bearing retainer, which is this block which is bolted inside to hold everything in position, to the flexible U-joint, which is right here and which is also right here. That obviously connects to the miter box, which sits right on the front fork. This is our basic drive system. These are the parts we've discussed today. These are the parts that you'd be removing, except of course for the driveline, which would stay inside the bike. If you have a problem with your miter box or with your transmission, you are recommended to send it to Rokon for repair rather than trying to take on that job yourself. We can get these things repaired within a day and back to you quickly. Thanks to Dave, your bike has two-wheel drive again. If you have any questions, please visit us on the web at www.rokon.com or call us at 800-593-2369.